How do I stop being so needy? Do you feel as though your neediness may be sabotaging your relationships? Well, here's what's really going on. Now, most people with anxious attachment tend to think that if they could simply tone down their needs, then they'll feel more secure in love and finally have the connection that they crave. But the truth is that it's usually not your needs that are causing the problem, it's the fear and the shame surrounding them. If you continue to try to shrink or downplay your needs, that's really not sustainable, and it only leads to cycles of self-doubt and emotional withdrawal. Now, the nature of your needs is really important. On the one hand, we have healthy needs, like respect, affection, and emotional connection. On the other hand, we might have needs that are rooted in old painful wounds. And these are driven by fear and tend to feel as if they are endless or insatiable. When our anxious attachment drives us to try to meet these needs in unhealthy ways, we can find ourselves falling into conflict spirals or even toxic situations, putting love even further out of reach. Now, in this segment, we're going to explore a definition for neediness, 4 types of anxious partners and their unique needs and growth challenges. We're also going to address the validation trap and the nature of attachment needs and how they feed what I call double troubles. We're also going to explore the 2 most important factors in healing anxious attachment and my 7-step process for helping you achieve this. After watching this video, you will know exactly how to address the fear that drives your most pressing needs, going from feeling desperate for reassurance to feeling confident and secure, so you can finally experience the type of loving partnership that you want with mutual support and growth. So before we dive in, just put a thumbs up there in the chat or drop a comment to let me know. Have you ever worried that your neediness was getting in the way with your relationships? Have you tried to tamp down your needs in order to appear more secure? I'd love to know your experiences. So to begin, maybe you've gotten caught in a cycle of thinking that if you dial down your needs, it will make you more secure in love. But shrinking your needs is not the solution. In fact, the real problem isn't your needs at all. It's typically the fear and insecurity surrounding them. And so what we really want to do in relationships is we want to turn towards our needs. We want to accept them. We want to learn more about them. We want to get clarity around them. And with that, now we get to communicate them with tact and intention rather than with defensive or controlling language. And once we're able to do this, that's what really alleviates the pressure we feel when we feel needy. But I want to slow down a little bit and really define this term neediness. So usually neediness is a sign of underlying conflicted emotions. Neediness is the same, it's a word that's like anxiety. It's just a blanket term that really just indicates that there's a deeper conflict, usually between 2 or more primary and core feelings and needs going on. So neediness is this nuanced quality of energy that suggests, or that we interpret as, we are lacking something pretty crucial. And the pressure we feel drives us to seek out something, usually some kind of external stimulus, to fill that gap. And so there are healthy needs, and these are needs that are perfectly reasonable and can be met in a relationship. And these are things like respect, kindness, shared affection, generosity, emotional connection, attention, affirmation, and so on. And so these are needs that invite a partner into a shared space to foster things like connection, growth, and intimacy, repair when we're in conflict, things like that. In addition to that, however, we do have needs that can stem from a deeper core wound. And these are needs that usually stem from fear or shame. And they can lead us to believe that we need to seek fulfillment either in unhealthy ways or with unhealthy people that ultimately cannot help us with that. And so those needs are really driven by anxiety or insecurity or fear or shame or guilt. And they can make us believe that love is conditional and elusive and always just out of reach. And it can also send us searching for things like validation from outside sources and feeling crushed on an existential level when we don't get it. But I think it's important to clarify here, especially for our anxious open hearts, that wanting or needing validation is not bad. In fact, seeking partners who are generous with their validation and their affirmation can lead to relationships that are filled with kindness, generosity, and reciprocal support. But there is a key difference between wanting validation to enhance intimacy versus wanting and needing and requiring it because that is what makes you feel worthy, whole, or comfortable in your own skin, right? So a securely attached person who values validation, they'll feel hurt if they don't get it, but then they ultimately will reject the partner who withholds, dismisses, or rejects them, recognizing that it's just not a good match. In contrast, someone that is an anxious open heart, they may start questioning their worthiness if there's no validation. They might pursue a partner who withholds affection or dismisses them, effectively kind of handing over their personal authority to someone who's not so considerate, is not generous, and is not interested in mutual support. And so that creates that cycle of internal pressure and intensity that keeps them chasing after someone who cannot satisfy their needs, and so they become needy. So healthy, reasonable needs in a relationship are respecting each other's time, requiring open and honest communication, requiring kindness and compassion in your interactions, shared collaborations and problem solving, sharing affection and spending quality time together. On the other hand, the needs that are rooted in these deep attachment wounds, they have a quality of being insatiable. And sometimes we may interpret even small things as big things. So maybe a partner wanting alone time winds up feeling like a total abandonment. And so we start thinking about love as something that is conditional, that requires constant affirmation. And so this is when we start to understand love as some kind of exchange of services, conditional love. So if I'm not needed, then why would someone love me? And conversely, if I don't need them, then why would I bother with them? So in my experience, anxious open hearts tend to express this understanding of love as conditional in 4 ways. And I think of them as 4 different styles or types of anxious attachment. And each one has their own kind of unique motivation, strengths, and growth challenges. So the first is chemistry chasers. And I would say chemistry chasers are typically at an early stage of their self-help journey. They are usually overachieving on some level, and they tend to seek intense passion in order to feel alive. And so they'll prioritize physical connection over emotional depth and even sacrifice their own needs to keep the spark alive. And they can be incredibly successful, generous, and inspiring human beings, but their ambition is typically fueled by a fear of inadequacy. And so they rely on external excitement to feel fulfilled and vital. So their growth challenge is really rediscovering their own vitality and fire from within. Then we have our capable caretakers. And so capable caretakers, these folks equate love with being needed. They need to be needed. And they find purpose in taking on responsibility and supporting others. And they're very dependable, and they're very loving, and they're very nurturing. But their drive can mask an underlying fear of helplessness or fears of abandonment. And so they wind up blaming themselves if a relationship falters, feeling that they must be too much and yet not enough. And so the underlying growth challenge for these folks is learning to ask for help and be willing to receive it. Then we have our romantic rescuers. So our romantic rescuers really crave deep emotional connection from the start, and they will rush past the flirtatious stage, or they'll rush past the small talk to uncover past traumas and share vulnerability right away. And they can be intensely loyal and eager to help and to heal their partner's pain, but because of that, they wind up blurring the boundaries, and they risk becoming their partner's therapist, and now they struggle to allow for space for individualism or autonomy in the relationship. And so their growth challenge is really about learning to set boundaries and to tolerate difficult feelings. And lastly, the 4th type I think of as approval seekers. So approval seekers are driven by a deep need to be liked and validated, and they often tailor themselves to whatever their partners want. And they are very likable, considerate, perceptive. These folks are real survivors and chameleons, but they can succumb to analysis paralysis, and they question themselves a lot. And so this self-doubt can lead to things like shame or imposter syndrome in their relationships. And so their growth challenge is embracing self-assuredness with a sense of mastery and creativity. So I'm just going to pause there for a minute. For those of you that are watching, which one sounds familiar? The chemistry chaser, the capable caretaker, the romantic rescuer, or the approval seeker? Sometimes we can have an overlapping of these different styles as well. And so when we feel needy, we are expressing a powerful internal conflict, a sense of powerlessness to really affect our own happiness, either because we've lost touch with our vitality, we're taking on too much responsibility, we struggle with healthy boundaries, or we are abandoning our own self-worth in search of external validation. So how do we reframe this idea that we're helpless, that we're lacking, we're not good enough in order to reduce the sense of neediness? So I believe that while anxious open hearts each have their own unique qualities, the path to healing is essentially the same. And that is tapping into our creativity and our personal power so that we can reclaim our inner child, we can find our voice, we can connect the transcendent aspects of our own spirit and ultimately take charge of our lives. And that allows us to accept our needs as they are and then lean into them so that we can determine which ones can be met in this situation and with this person and which ones are actually stemming from a wound that's coming up because it's safe enough now for me to process it in a new way. So for instance, we might have a healthy need for comfort, but that can spiral into an insatiable need if we're interpreting a partner's independent time as some kind of punitive withdrawal. And so in these moments, it's helpful to recognize how much of that neediness is stemming from a past wound versus a genuine desire for connection. So maybe the part of you that wants comfort and connection to a healthy degree takes up 40% of the emotional and energetic intensity you're experiencing. But the needy urgency that you feel around it, maybe that indicates there's like 60% of that intensity that's actually stemming from an old wound. And that's something that you now know you can dig into and process. And of course, you could process this with your partner's help. And sometimes this is something that people really love and value about the experience of being in a relationship. But you can also do this in other ways. You don't have to be in a relationship in order to learn how to do this. And you can do it with other supportive people in relationships that may even be better suited to help you, such as with a therapist or in a support group or something like that. And it's also important to recognize that it's not a partner's full responsibility to fix, heal, or take care of it for you. And why is that? Because that is going to perpetuate the original nature of the wound. The idea that your happiness is subject to someone else, to something outside of yourself that you cannot control. And because of that, you're powerless to affect your circumstances. Some things you can control and some things you can't. It's not all or nothing. And once we have a better handle on what's what, then that clarity reduces this needy pressure that we feel. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me and interpret this as me saying that some needs are valid and some needs are not. All needs are valid. All needs are valid, and I honor my needs no matter what. And honoring my needs means knowing that I need to look into and recognize their nature and assume a loving acceptance and responsibility for that. And once we're able to sift and sort through the subtler emotions that exist beneath neediness, which is just a blanket term, now you're assuming a lot more control of your life because you're surrendering what you can't control and thereby assuming a lot more control over what you can. And this is going to make you so much more available and accessible to the love that already exists inside of you. And it's just waiting for you to let down these negative limiting beliefs about love having to be out there and that you got to find it somewhere. Let down those walls, let down those barriers so that you can finally feel it viscerally. And before I close this explanation, I'm going to add a word of caution here. When we start this process of reparenting ourselves, right? Learning to process, ooh, this is that 60% of my wound I need to process. And here's the 40% that actually belongs in the present relationship that my partner can contribute to. Once we start that process of reparenting ourselves, assuming more personal agency, we may be doing it with the intention to escape our neediness, to tamp it down, to feel calm. I don't want to feel this discomfort anymore. And then oftentimes what happens is there's a wave of resentment or resistance that comes up. And this more resentful part of us may have evolved as a protector, kind of stepping in when our needs were unmet in the past. And so this protective part of us just wants somebody else to finally take care of it. Somebody else to carry the load for a while. And it is sick and tired of being the responsible one yet again. Now I got to be the parent again. Right? So unless we address that part directly in the healing process and early on, it's going to keep driving that needy energy. And you're going to feel like you're spinning in circles. You keep acquiring more and more insight. You're doing the work, you're doing the self-help, you're taking action, and yet nothing feels like it's changed. And these are what I call double troubles. Now we're beating ourselves up for beating ourselves up, and we're anxious about how anxious we are. And that is because it is this part that has not been addressed directly. And so we have to engage with this part directly so that we can emotionally and energetically unburden it. So how do we do that? How do we connect to the transcendent part of ourselves and sort through our needs in this way so we can reduce that pressure and start to integrate what our past wounds may have to teach us? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in my Anxious Attachment 101 program. We're going to be looking at understanding attachment styles and how your attachment style has shaped your relationships, how we can apply your specific strengths to supporting your healing journey, decoding developmental traumas and how that impacts the body and the way that we process our emotions, establishing safety in the body and starting to feel comfortable with it. Then we're also going to look at 3 types of emotional influence and 3 types of empathy and how we can start to clarify our core values and beliefs, which leads to cultivating healthy boundaries, right? And then we're going to be connecting to the inner child and going through some exercises to build some self-trust so we can work with that part I just mentioned and alleviate the neediness by being able to clarify and sift and sort through what part of this comes from my insecurity and what part of this comes from that healthy place, that secure part of me that exists inside of me already, right? Now, I truly have seen and witnessed that anxious attachment doesn't have to be hard, lengthy, or require a secure partner, or the rehashing of endless stories about childhood struggles in order to heal, in order to evolve, right? And so in this program, in 7 weeks, we are going to release emotional blocks, and we're going to do it with fun, hands-on creative arts therapy techniques and guided visualization exercises. And we're going to do it by addressing what's coming up for you right here, right now in the present moment. Historical stories and context may come up, but we don't start there. It comes up when it needs to come up, but we are here in the present moment working with it in a very visceral way. Okay. So this curriculum is really designed to maximize your time, to accelerate these processes by addressing key attachment patterns, and to do it in a fun, creative way that activates your body. Take Rose, for example. When Rose joined my course, she had gone from feeling secure in relationships to anxious and needy after falling into the anxious avoidant trap. After putting the lessons into practice, however, and focusing on her own inner healing, she found a secure and loving partner. But I'll let Rose speak for herself.
I took Brianna McWilliams' class, Anxious Attachment 101, about 2 years ago when I was caught in the anxious avoidant trap. Unlike talk therapy, it gave me the techniques and tools to break that cycle and to break out of that trap. Now I'm in a secure relationship for about 6 months with a wonderful man. The biggest takeaway or insight that I have was the self-love. Now I love myself and I'm okay on my own. I just, I'm so happy to share my life with someone else without needing to do that. I would recommend taking this course because really it's the only thing out there that really delves deep into what we people who suffer with anxious attachment can do and get that anxiety out through movement and drawing and be able to recover so that we can.
Healing anxious attachment doesn't have to be hard, lengthy, require a secure partner, or require endless rehashing of childhood struggles. In just 7 weeks, my program, Anxious Attachment 101, helps you connect to your inner child, release emotional blocks, and get in touch with the secure core essence of you using fun and creative art therapy techniques and guided visualizations. This program is carefully designed to maximize your time, accelerate transformational processes, and address key attachment patterns with hands-on skill-building exercises and activities. If you would like to join us, just click the link attached to this video. In 4 easy questions, we will evaluate your attachment style and connect you to the correct 101 course that is the right starting point for you. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. I take all comments and feedback into consideration when creating new content like this.